Gamers, we're back with another tier list and another video. Today, we are doing the 2 versus 2 and 3 versus 3 tier list. Now, 4v4, listen, you can play whatever. Like, who cares? You can play Abbasid in 4v4 if you want. But generally, what's good in 2v2 is good in 3v3 and it's good in 4v4 for the same reasons. So you can look at this tier list like just 2v2, 3v3, 4v4 tier list civilizations. And we're gonna start with the good stuff. Boom. That's the only S tier French is gonna see. A team game S tier. The reason is very simple. Any night civ in team games is like the best thing you can do. And that's simply always been the case, and it's always going to be the case. You can make knights, you can harass. Your knights are basically twice as good because the distance on 2v2, 3v3, 4v4 maps is larger than 1v1. So because they're faster than infantry, they can cover more ground. But not only that, you can also harass multiple people with the same knights. So if they say, you know, I go spearman, you go archers, if you just bully the archer guy with the knights, the spearman guy has to send the units to him. Or when you play against knight civs, you kind of both have to have a counter to knights, which, you know, if the French allies like English and French goes knights and English goes just longbows, they're going to have an advantage because they're kind of just focusing on one unit that is very, very strong. So for that reason, French is S tier, and just like pretty much every knight civ is going to be S tier. So I do think that Rus, in my opinion, is better. We had some big 2v2 and 3v3 tournaments in the past. I can't remember when the last EGC TV hosted tournament was for team games, but I feel like it's been a year. But the civs that dominated were knight civs by quite a large margin. Rus specifically. Now, in my opinion, Rus is better than French. And the reason for that is your knights arrive a bit later, but you have Kremlin, which if you put Kremlin on your gold, you basically completely negate your opponent being able to harass your food plus gold for a very, very long time. Then if you go on outside Deer or Boar, your wooden fortress has 8 villager slots, so you can actually get a lot more gathering and it has more HP. Whereas French is like very vulnerable to harass throughout the whole game. Right, and also Rus walls are better as well. They got more HP, so that's also nice. And you can defend yourself with some gremlins as Rus. And again, French is more vulnerable compared to that. So in my opinion, Rus is probably the best knight civ in team games that you can do because of those reasons. Whenever you play 2v2, for example, or 3v3, you force the opponents to go for more than one scout. And you are not going more than one scout usually. You just make a scout from a hunting cabin. So you can, you know, get a lot of bounty and also be ahead on villagers. Now you can also go scout from town center, get more bounty, but, you know, then you're equal footing as your opponent. And a lot of people hate killing, you know, deer and wolves against Rus, so kind of adds a little annoying part to it. Next one we'll be talking about is going to be, where do we go from here? Actually, I don't know if I'm going to put French in S tier. I'm going to put it in A tier for now. Another S tier civ, in my opinion, is English. 2 reasons, depending which maps you play. English is also not really harassable if you play well. Because you can actually defend knight civs with just longbows and nothing else. And English can supplement and complement any civilization. Like if they play with knight civ, they have longbows, which is amazing, right? Like knight longbow is amazing comp. If they play with men-at-arms civ, that's also amazing. They got longbows. If you need to protect your ally, longbow standing next to DC is a great way to defend your ally. You're not really harassable early on. Then you don't need outside food sources, which is kind of big in 2v2. And part of the reason why English is one of my favorite civs in 2v2 is not only that you don't need to go on the map to get food because you can just start early farms, you can also give all the food to your ally, which is very, I feel like, underappreciated and underestimated thing. So if you're playing with like Abbasid or Delhi or Rus or French, doesn't matter, they can take your berries, they can take your deer. So instead of a Rus player having 2 deer packs for himself, they have 4, which is quite big. And also if your French ally takes deer packs, they have 4 deer packs, and the opponents like French and whatever Civ are gonna have less food. There's another interesting strategy that I've done recently that I played around with. You can go English plus HRE, for example, and just kind of, again, prove that it can work with any type of player or civilization. And you can actually give most of your sheep to the HRE player and let them rush castle into burger or into cathedral, because you're not going to need as many sheep. You can just go early farms and you're fine. So I think English is probably the most versatile Civ. I'm not going to say it's better than Rus or worse than Rus, because they're they have a different role, so it's kind of unfair to compare them. But like, if you want the best knight Civ, you go Rus. If you want the best all-around Civ, English is probably really good with that. The next Civ I'll be talking about, I'm probably gonna move some stuff around, by the way, just so you guys know. I've been playing a lot of 2v2s recently, but I still don't have it in my mind like what's the absolute worst Civ. Let's go with Delhi. I think Delhi is an alright Civ in team games. I don't think it's amazing. It might even be C tier, but we'll put it in B tier for now. It has to have a specific teammate in order to work. And Delhi can be played in 2 ways. You can do like the Mel Delhi, which is the melee Delhi. You go for Ghazi Raiders into Spearmen. The problem with that is if you go into Ghazi Raiders and your opponent has Knights, then you have to make Spearmen. So then you're not fully committing to raiding, but you're also going Spearmen to defend yourself. So it's like kind of, you know, so-so. And then you have the other type of Delhi, which is just Mass Archer. So because of Tower of Victory gives you attack speed buff on your infantry, you can also go for Mass Archers, and you can team up with French or with Rus or, you know, with whatever other knight Civ there is in the game, and you can just spam archers, which is probably a better style, to be fair, and all your upgrades are free, which is really nice for Delhi, so you're just gonna need a crap ton of wood to spam those. Another good part about Delhi is you kind of force the opponents to be out on the map. So if you're playing against boom Civs very often in team games, you can pick Delhi, and the moment you capture Sacred Sites, they kind of have to do something, right? You force them to come out and play, literally. The next Civ I'll be talking about is going to be... this is a rough one. So again, this is mainly... By the way, this tier list, I just want to do a disclaimer. This tier list is for top level gameplay. I know that some guys going to be like, in Bronze League, Ottoman is OP because they make 40 great bombards and I lose. Yeah, but that doesn't happen in most AOE4 games, right? I think Ottoman is D or C tier. I think Ottoman is not very good in team games because it's so slow. It might be, I'll put it in C tier for now. I might move it lower. Ottoman recently got a lot of nerfs, which reduces their military production speed. And the only really viable strat for Ottoman in 2v2 is going to most likely be just Mass Archer. They have the attack speed from Mehter, so you're kind of playing like an Archer Civ. But if I had to choose if I'm going to play Ottoman or Delhi, I would probably choose Delhi. Simply because Delhi can make units a lot quicker. Like, Ottoman needs to make military schools. The military schools in Dark Age are not as good because the map is bigger, so the Spearmen don't do much. And then by the time you get your archer mass, Delhi can make like 20 archers and push you already. So S plus in 44 gold. I believe that. I believe that. Next Civ we'll be talking about is another S tier Civ, and that S tier Civ is Ayyubid. Ayyubid is incredibly strong in team games, and the reason for that is it's the first Castle Rush Civ we have on our tier list. So why is it good? Well, they open military wing, so they can put some pressure on their opponents, like in one-on-ones, or they can help their allies. So you can play Ayyubid plus whatever else, and if that whatever else is getting harassed by French Knights, you can send your Desert Raiders to help defend your ally. Meanwhile, you'll have tower on your gold, and you can rush up to castle really quickly. So why are they one of the best civs in team games? And the reason is very simple. It's because they can make units fast. They get free units very early on from the military wing. And once they age up to castle, they can go the economy wing to get more workers, or they can go the dervish wing to pick up relics quickly, which is really good. But the main reason why Ayyubid is so strong in team games is you can either spam Desert Raiders as your main unit comp, or you can go Camel Lancers because you debuff the enemy cavalry by 20%. So all their damage is reduced 20%. So if the opponent, let's say, picks Rus French and you pick Ayyubid English, in theory, if both sides play well, Ayyubid English should absolutely destroy that matchup because longbows are going to be better than Rus or French archers. And then Ayyubid will have Desert Raiders or Camel Lancers, which are going to debuff the knights from the civs. So you should have an easy matchup. So Ayyubid is amazing into countering the knight civs, but Ayyubid is not that great into, you know, civilizations like English, for example, in team games. But because the map is bigger in 2v2 and 3v3, it kind of becomes a bit harder to prevent these castle rushes because the distance is a lot bigger. So if Ayyubid gets like a back gold or something and his ally gives him some sheep, they can age up to castle very quickly and then start producing Camel Lancers, and then they turn into a Knight Civ, a Lancer Civ, and it can also chase enemy cavalry, which is very underestimated and underrated. So the way that Camel Lancers work, they can charge 3 times the distance, and the longer they're charging, they're getting more damage. So if the enemy is running away with Lancers, you can actually catch up with them by moving a little bit back and then charging, and the charge will hit. And the enemy knights or Lancers cannot turn around because then they're fighting a losing battle. So it's a great civ. Love it. The next civ we'll be talking about is going to be... That's a hard one. I think I might have to go like this. Now, we've seen a lot of Abbasid recently in team games. I personally am not up for it at all. Like, I've played some 2v2s and a lot of the top Conqueror players are picking Abbasid in 2v2. I personally don't think it's good, simply because I've seen French Abbasid or JD Abbasid and stuff like that. I personally don't think it's that good, because you need to make a second TC, then you need to start making archer ranges, and you need to get your upgrades, and you need to start making archers. So if you're playing against like a castle rush civ like Ayyubid, they're gonna reach castle, you're not gonna be able to do anything about it. If you're playing against like French plus English, that second TC, even if it goes up, you're going to get absolutely murdered. Yes, I'm gonna swap these. Actually, like, it can work. It's not terrible. But some matchups are really bad. Really bad. So I personally don't like this boom style civs in team games. I prefer much more aggressive, and usually when you play like top level 2v2s, it's usually more aggressives that do really well. We're gonna have to give it a little D. But they're great in one-on-ones, you know. Ottoman, yeah, well, Ottoman. The next civ I'll be talking about is going to be an interesting one, but it is going to be Japanese. And Japanese, it's a castle rush civ, right? So it goes in the line with Ayyubid, and I'm gonna have to put Japanese in A tier. I think Japanese is not bad at all for team games, actually. It's very similar to Ayyubid. You want to rush castle. Now, the advantage that Japanese has over Ayyubid or other, castle rush civs is they can spam units really fast in castle. So the moment they rush up to castle, they can put the Yorishiro in stables, and then basically it counts as 2 stables, and you're just spamming mounted samurais. Mounted samurais are also very good in the fights against other knights because they block the first attack. So, because the knights have very slow attack but a very strong attack, mounted samurai blocking one attack is a very big deal, and they will allow you to trade a lot better, in those kinds of fights. Obviously, you can't make knights or mounted samurais in feudal, but once you get to castle, they're really, really good. Another reason why Japanese is good is if you make towers to defend yourself, you don't need to mine any stone because the gold drop-off also gives you stone, so that's really nice. You can just kind of upgrade the tower immediately. Because of the, what is the landmark called? Kaka Township? Is that what it's called? Or is that the other one? The one where it generates farms is really nice because it also makes it so that you can stay around your town center longer. So basically the idea is you will have, storehouse. Kura storehouse, right. You will basically have more food around your TC with the farms so that you can go to outside food sources later on. And that allows you to, kind of survive that initial attack. And then later on, once you get map control, you go on the map and you can gather whatever you want. And also, just like Ayyubid, pairing Japanese with English or with some civ that doesn't require as many sheep is very good because it allows you to just have all your eco chilling for free. Next civ we'll be talking about is going to be... I'll do Malian. I've played against some Malian and I've played with some Malian, and the problem is you cannot go Sofa, right? You just can't. And the reason you cannot go Sofa is because usually there's a Knight Civ in the other team. So if you go Sofa, your Sofas are gonna get dented in completely. So Cavalry is a no-go. So already at the start, you have to go Javelin Thrower, Archers, or Donzos, or mix of all three. But again, civs that have to mix units tend to not do as well. Like if you cannot defend yourself by making one unit, it requires you to make more production buildings. And then if the opponent is making also those types of units but just focuses on one, they'll have more of it. So I think Donzos are great. The thing is, there's like no combo that's played in team games where it's like Donzo Longbow. Right? Nobody goes for that because you want the cavalry civ so that they can harass the opponent. If you go for a mass army, it's a lot harder to actually push in 2v2 than it is in 1-on-1 or 3v3 because the maps are bigger, but also there's so many places that the workers can be that your infantry is going to get so hard to get to those points that Knight Civs are always going to be better because of it. So while you have a strong push, you can't really end games that quickly. You also have to get, your second pit mine, which is usually going to be obviously not anywhere near close to your base, which is going to be open to Knight Civs. And it just becomes a little bit too much to defend. The one way that Malian is played in 1-on-1 is by Cow Boom. But again, similar to Abbasid, you can go for Malian Cow Boom, but it feels like you're just, you're booming and then your ally or you are getting pressured quite a bit. Now you can play Malian with some civilizations, preferably some civilization that can pressure your opponent so you can boom a little bit. But I feel like their strongest unit is probably going to be like Javelin Thrower and Donzo, but those two units are just too slow. And if the English player is producing pure Longbow and you're producing Javelin Thrower, eventually you're going to reach like a critical mass of Javelin Throwers where you're going to massively overkill against whatever you're hitting. So I'm personally not a big fan of it. Again, I'm not saying it's terrible, but there's also a very big lack of synergy with any civ, I feel like. Malians used to be able to make cows for your allies, but that's been nerfed long time ago where the gathering rate is like really low for your allies. You can still do that, by the way. You can go Malian OTD or Malian HRE and you can make cows for your allies, but it's not as good as it used to be. Next civ we'll be talking about is going to be JD. I think JD is, it's A tier. It has knights, and it comes with a little extra annoying thing, which is the hero. Like, recently, when we played the games, I would always rather play against French than JD. Simply because she can do some annoying stuff. Like, she can attack you really early with, like, one knight, and then JD is an archer. And even if you have spearmen, then she can pick off your spearmen, and it forces you to make more units. It just creates, like, different problems than French, I guess. Her economy is a bit slower. because you don't produce workers as fast as French. But you can also get a lot of value with JD because you reduce the cost of your unit. So you have like longevity. You'll run out of food way later compared to French because your stuff is cheaper. You can produce a lot more, that is. But French will have more workers and usually better eco. Probably the way to go is gonna be range JD and not the melee. Since JD has been nerfed, so it's really not that strong anymore. And mass spearmen kind of civs are not super popular in team games. I would say that going range JD and being able to snipe knights that are low HP or just snipe workers is really good. And later on, if the game gets to that point, you can actually snipe siege with JD Q ability. Yeah. The next one we'll be talking about is going to be... okay, I'll put China in B tier. I actually think China is A tier because of Barbican. But I'm going to put it in B tier because I feel like you need to play China really well. And you need to have a very specific ally. Like if your ally is actually a knight civ and they're just making knights and you're going for 2 TC or something, it's not really gonna work. Like you need some kind of support, especially early on. And then if you're going for 2 TC China, you're not gonna be able to help your ally quite a bit. One of the strongest comps that I've played with Chinese was actually English plus Chinese. And the reason for that is you can open with Barbican, get your second TC, and your ally doesn't need your help because English can hold on their own for quite a long time with longbows. So you're kind of both independent, and then when eventually one of you gets attacked, then you join up, right? But if you're playing like Abbasid Chinese, the Abbasid is absolutely going to get murdered by the enemy in 2v2 because you can't really help them early on. So Abbasid can be played, but again, you need a ally civ that can kind of hold on their own, because otherwise it just ain't gonna work. Like I think Rus would also be great with China because Rus with Kremlin cannot really be harassed early on, and then Rus can help you very easily with knights, right? But then China French I think is not as good because French can be pressured quite easily. So I think that if China is played well, it's an A tier, but it's a very unique style to play in team games. And you need to know, not only you need to know how to play it properly, but your ally needs to know how to play with China properly. The next civ we'll be talking about is going to be Mongol and how the mighty have fallen. I think Mongol is pretty shit in team games, I ain't gonna lie. The reason I say pretty shit is because Mongol used to be the #1 civ in 2v2, right? It used to be the best civ by far in 2v2. And it was either banned or picked like immediately, right? Now the reason why they're not as good anymore is because even then people figure out certain timings where the Mongol tower rush, if it spawns in the front, the Mongol does the tower rush. But then people are like, oh, I can just move to my ally and mine gold there. So it's like, yeah, your gold is delayed a bit, but then also your age up is delayed and your opponent is already aging up. Then, if the opponent's gold is in the back, I feel like it's so bad because it requires like an extra 15 to 20 seconds to go around the TC to get to the back. And then even if you get the tower up, let's say, because it's in the back of the enemy base, it's so hard for you to reinforce the tower that the tower will die very quickly. Like at some point, the opponent will pull units, kill it, and that's it. And from then on out, what is your game plan? Your game plan is trade. And trade is great, and trade can work and can be good. But the problem is, if you look, the top civilizations are all knight civs. So yeah, you can go trade, but you're gonna play against Rus Knights, French Knights, JD, Japanese Castle Rush, which by the time you get trade even like 5 traders in, the Japanese will be aging up and making mounted samurais. And then Keshik, which is usually what you make with Mongol, or like Keshik spearmen to defend your trade, is not gonna be able to defend that or be that good. And then we have some of the other civs like Ayyubid, that is a Castle Rush civ, and Japanese like I mentioned. And because of the distance, your Castle Rush will not really be on time. It's not Mongol into English is not very good for Mongol, in my opinion. In team games, Mongol versus China, China can actually just kill you with Spearman and Dark Age now. And recently, Mongol has been nerfed, the Uvu Stone. So, is Mongol playable? Yeah, but it's very spawn dependent, where your opponent's gold is, not where your spawn is. And also which or which ally you're playing with. One of the best civs for Mongols to play with is French and JD. So if you're looking for like a team comp, or you're playing with your buddy or whatever, Mongol French, Mongol JD, Mongol English is very, very strong and probably their best comps, because you do a tower rush, enemy age is up, they don't have gold because you blocked it, and suddenly your allies coming with knights, they don't have knights, they're forced to go into like spears, then you age up and you go into archers. So it's a very tempo based kind of civ, right? But then some civs don't care about gold, so like if you play Mongol against Delhi, it's pretty bad for you because Delhi doesn't really need gold. So yeah, but there's some good matchups. Mongol versus Mali, Mongol versus Abbasid can be okay. You can also, there's an interesting opening. You can open with double horsemen in Dark Ages Mongol and not go for the tower and just harass both opponents' golds. And then your ally goes for knights and the enemy doesn't have knights. So you can create situations like that, but like I said, not as good. I think we also learn how to play a little bit more. Next civ I'll be talking about is going to be Jushi's Legacy. I'm gonna put it in C tier. I think Jushi and China, if they go to TC, obviously it's more or less the same how it plays out early on, like feudal and castle. But the one difference that Jushi can do over China is they can attack faster. And this is great if you're playing against like castle rush civs like Ayyubid or Japanese. They can attack very quickly, they can supervise the siege engineering. And they can go for Zuginu, and then the opponent, your ally can go for knights or something, and that's great. But then there's some bad matchups. There's if you're playing against English, the Zuginu are kind of shit. When I say kinda, they're very shit. If you're playing against, like, let's say you're playing French Jushi Legacy. If your opponents are French English, you will absolutely get demolished because they're gonna go knight longbow and you're gonna go knight what? Knight Zuginu? That ain't gonna work, chief. So yeah, it can be good, but I feel like most of the matchups are not gonna be good for you. Like any two civilizations that plan to make units in feudal, I feel like that's gonna be a bad matchup for you. Not to mention Zuginu are very slow, but if you manage to get like your base defended, well defended, and if you manage to get a ball of like 40-50 Zuginu, then you're probably going to be in a good spot, but then your opponent was probably napping the whole game. So then we got HR to the E. I'm going to put HRE in B. Yeah, I'm going to put... I just think the Knight Civs are too good. Like, I don't think HRE is bad. I think the Knight Civs are just too good. So I think HRE is B because there's two ways to play HRE, right? If you're playing team games, at least. There's the Castle Rush, and then there's the Castle Rush. One Castle Rush is where you go Cathedral. Now, if you're playing against players that have one of these, which is a keyboard, and one of these, which is a mouse, you should not be able to get a single relic. Now, if your opponent does not have a keyboard and a mouse, then you can take a lot of relics and you're going to get a lot of gold and it's going to be great. But if you're playing against aggressive players in 2v2, you will simply not get a single relic, your gold is going to get dented in by rams and knights, and your ally will not be able to help you. Now, the other style with HRE is, funnily enough, it used to be a meme, like Burger in team games, but I actually think Burger in team games is not bad at all. Because when, this is the interesting thing about HRE. When you play HRE, you go for a Castle Rush, you can actually decide on the spot which landmark to go. So, for example, if you're playing against whatever two civs, and they're both being passive, you rush Castle and you go Cathedral. and you ask your ally to come help you, and you take the relics, and it's great. But if you're getting all in by French or French English or whatever civ, you actually can go burger and just spam men-at-arms with maces. You just need to make sure you have enough gold mined, or you can even go mine gold at your allies as they're attacking you. And then the burger is not so much all in anymore. It's more like you're trying to survive and stabilize because they're both stuck in feudal, and suddenly you have castle units. So if your ally helps you at the moment they're about to push your main TC, and you hold for a bit and you continue gathering food and gold, you'll be able to counter push very quickly with heavy maces, men-at-arms, and you're going to be able to do quite well. But the problem with this is it is very, very predictable, and people will pretty much know what you're going to do ahead of the time. Recently in one-on-ones we've seen a lot of like feudal HRE. People are playing it with like spearman, man-at-arm, or just mass archer, and that can be good too. Like unironically, you can probably go HRE mass archer plus, you know, French for knights, because your archers are 10% faster, which is actually quite big because the enemy cannot run away from you. But if you're playing against a civ like Delhi or Ottoman, where they have 20% attack speed, they don't need to run away from you. Their units will do more damage to you. So if you're winning the fight, right, HRE is great because you can chase them down and kill all their units. But if you're losing the fight, or if you're even, you will lose the fight because their units have 20% attack speed. So, yeah. Order of the Dragon and Byzantine left. Now, I'm gonna be honest, I don't really know where to put these two. So this is, for me, it's gonna be a guess on both of these. I have played OTD and Byzantine. I actually prefer OTD to HRE in team games. And the reason for that is, if you go HRE, let's say, and you age up with Cathedral, you can't really go stable and then make knights. The reason for that is, a feudal knight versus a castle knight, obviously castle knight wins. But if the enemy has 10 feudal knights and you have 3 castle knights, you're not winning that, right? And that's why usually HRE in team games does not go knights, because you're behind on knight count. And then if an opponent ages up and upgrade their knights, you're fucked, because suddenly you're just behind on knights, right? You didn't do anything. But with OTD, when you make the knight from OTD, not only you will absolutely destroy the enemy knights, you don't actually need to stay very long. You can do a charge and auto attack, and the knight lost like 60% of health. And then you can just go back and heal it with prelates. You get a lot more value, I feel like, from OTD knights than you do from HRE knights. When I played both HRE and OTD in a very similar way, I preferred OTD by quite a lot. Another thing that's pretty cool with OTD, because you go mine work, you can get +1 ranged attacks for your towers. You can actually destroy the enemy knights a lot better if they're trying to dive on their towers or whatever else, which I personally prefer quite a bit. OTD, just like HRE, is probably going to require some babysitting from your ally, you know, whether they give you some sheep or, you know, send you units to help you or whatever else. So I can't put OTD, like, I'm not going to put a D tier, I'm not gonna, definitely not A or S tier. I genuinely don't know, right? Like, if I had to pick, I would put it between B and C tier, like a C+, B-, because I don't think it's as good as these civs, but I'll just put it in C tier. Maybe it's here, maybe it's not. I don't know, right? I'm just being honest with you, all right? I haven't played OTD enough in team games to get a grasp on how it works against all the matchups, right? And then Byzantine is very interesting, and I saved it for last. Now, Byzantine is in a very unique position, similar to English. It takes a bit longer to kind of kick in and get going, but I'm going to put Byzantine in B tier, but I actually think it might be an A tier civ, and I'm going to explain why. I haven't seen a lot of people play Byzantine, but recently I played some team games with Core, and I started thinking about this, like, what do you do as Byzantine? this is the great part. If you play, let's say your main civ is English, and you want to play with French, and for some reason you can't play English, right? Let's say you're in a tournament. You can go French Byzantine, and Byzantine can take the role of other civs, basically. So if you're playing against English and you're Byzantine, you can go javelin throwers. If you're playing Byzantine with French and you're playing against Rus French, they're gonna both make knights, you can go mass limitanei, which are great, right? And then you can add your own keshiks, so you can go keshik limitanei. If you're playing against a civilization like Abbasid and you're playing with French, you can go French knights plus longbow and limitanei, so that limitanei can potentially dive under TCs, and longbows are very good against Abbasid. And this is the reason why I think Byzantine is A tier. Now, I haven't played them enough like OTD, but in theory they should be good. Their bad thing is that they do take a little bit to kind of kick in and get going, and they don't really have I mean, they have special units, but they don't have knights. They can go for hippodrome, but actually the biggest strength, not only the mercenary part where you can kind of play different civs, the biggest strength of Byzantine, which I realized when I played with Core last time, is you don't need any sheep, even less than English. So if you guys watched my guide recently on Byzantine, the one where you go for very early farms and so on, you can actually only use like 6 sheep maybe, and you can give all the other sheep to your ally, which is really sick value. Yeah, it's like a flex civ. Yeah, it is, because you can do so many things. And like, if you want to make longbows, yeah, you obviously want to prefer to pick English, right? If you want to make javelin throwers, you can pick Malian. But if you want a civ that can adapt to what your opponent is doing no matter what, I think Byzantine might be the best civ for it in team games, because you can truly adapt to whatever you're facing. And that's, I think, the biggest strength. Like, I don't think you're doing anything the best, well, except giving the sheep to your ally. So what you do in team games is you open with the berry landmark that gives you oil, and you're gonna slowly add farms. And because you're doing that, you can give all your sheep to your ally. So Byzantine can work great with French, with Rus, JD, Japanese, Ayyubid, because they need a lot of resources under the TC. It can work with OTD because you want to give them sheep to age up to castle. It can work with HRE. It can work with China because you can give them sheep so they have all the sheep under the mill for supervising, which I think is great and gives you a shit ton of value. And another thing that I found interesting and good is similar to Japanese, how you can make a tower and then upgrade it with stone. I think that Byzantine can also do that, right? You get stone every time you make a building, so you can also make a tower super early if you need to, and then upgrade it. You can also make a tower for your ally even, right? If your H3 ally is rushing castle, you can make a tower for them. So there's a lot of interesting things. I think again, if I had more time to play, I think Byzantine would go here, simply because of all the reasons I just named. Mainly the sheep stuff is quite big, but I'm gonna put it here for now because I'm not 100% sure, and I don't wanna make a call that I'm not sure about. But definitely try playing with Byzantine. Obviously the civ is very hard, but it has some interesting mechanics, and your allies are gonna love you for all the sheep that they're gonna give you. So there it is. Another synergy with Byzantines, by the way. Your allies, if your allies are Abbasid and Delhi, they can make mills on your berries, so they will boost the amount of berries that you have on your mills. So for example, same thing can be done with Ayyubid. If Ayyubid opens up Eco Wing, their berries will give extra 50 food, so they can then make mill on your berries, and all your berries will get bonus 50 food from the age up, plus however much they get plus 100, right? Per berry normally. So you're gonna get 7,050 food more. And if those berries, the first berries, are in the range of the oil landmark, you're also gonna get way more oil. And that's pretty sick, right? So there's a lot of synergy to be had there. But that's it. I'm trying to see if there's anything I would change. but I kind of like where it is. Now, most of these, I went straight from 2v2s, by the way. But if you're wondering, like, what about 3v3s, what about 4v4s? Like, honestly, if you're wondering what's the best team comp in 3v3, I would probably go, like, French, Rus, English, French, Rus, Ayyubid, English, Japanese, Ayyubid, English, JD, Rus. You can also do, like, a French plus English to put pressure, and then you can have a Castle Rush Civ. And I think that's a good balance to have. You can have one Knight Civ, one more passive Civ like Byzantine or English, and then you can have one Civ that Castle Rushes. And it's all about, like, mixing it up. If you want to boom, you can do that too. But like I said, if you're playing high-level team games in 3v3, 4v4, 2v2, if you pick like Abbasid, China, Jushi, and Malian, you're probably gonna die. Or one of your allies will die very, very quickly. So that is it. If you're watching this on YouTube, I want to thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Check me out on Twitch. I'm probably live right now. If you're watching on Twitch, I want to thank you for watching as well, because I will be going offline on Twitch as well. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure you subscribe as well. Apparently only 50% of viewers on YouTube are subscribed. What's up with that? It's free. Come on. Thank you. Have a good night. Till tomorrow.